So I'm pleased to see, and one of my subs told me that Mummy Ramblings responded to the Cindy Watts interview, and there is a long history between Cindy Watts, Miss Mensa, and Mummy Ramblings. There's been a back and forth between them for quite a long time, and we all know that Miss Mensa literally doesn't talk about anything else on her channel but the Watts case, although I don't think her interest is actually in Chris Watts. I think her fascination and fixation is on Shanann. Most of the thumbnails that she does are on Shanann, either clear images or blurry images. And I think she also has a major fascination with Cindy Watts and the dynamic between the relationship that Cindy Watts had with Shanann, her daughter-in-law. Anyway, I just want to say this. I think that Mommy Rambling's reaction is almost 100% correct. I don't always agree with Mummy Ramblings. I'm not a fan of Mummy Ramblings. However, I think that she was spot on with the things that she brought up in her reaction video, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later in the podcast. Also want to say that I've been putting out too many videos in short spaces of time, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put out another long video for about a week or so, or at least 3 days, because I don't usually put out this many long videos in such a short space of time. Also, if I ever get, I've got problems with my internet where it comes on and it comes off, it goes off and it comes back on again. And so if I ever disappear for a few days, that might be the reason, because it's just a nightmare to boot my computer back up. It really is. But anyway, yeah, I agreed with the things that Mummy Rambling said about the Cindy Watts interview. It's even things that I didn't think about. I mean, here Cindy Watts is talking about ice cream, how they had this disagreement, this fallout over some ice cream. And, Shanann was supposed to be a bad person because she raised her voice at Cindy Watts over some ice cream. And when you think about that in the context of what actually happened and what her son actually did, what Cindy's son, Chris, actually did, when you think about the ice cream situation, the nut situation in the context of what actually happened, it really is trivial. I think Cindy is a woman that's just full of resentment still, very bitter. And, she just cannot get over the fact that her son will be where he is for the remainder of his days. She cannot. She has to have someone to blame for that. It can never be his fault. And I think that's where everything went wrong for Chris. In the evening, as soon as it gets dark where I am, I turn off all the overhead lights. Cannot do overhead light. I cannot do bright light at night. It would give me a migraine. I like salt lamps and candles and neutral tones. That is just me. And it's not good for romance. Bright light is not good for romance either. So I like overhead lights are off, candles come on, and maybe a salt lamp or two. And I like a nice ambience, because overhead light is just too much for me. So anyway, I like to record my podcast in soft candlelight. And it's daytime now, so I don't have my candles on. So it feels a bit odd. Anyway, I don't believe for 1 second that Dave doesn't know what happened in terms of, I think he knows that Chris did this. But I think that the narrative suits him better, that there are others involved, and that, he's not the only person that did this. It suits him better. His ruse is that he's on a search for the truth, and he's gotten nowhere. He's gotten views, he's gotten subs, but he hasn't gotten anywhere in terms of getting to the bottom of anything. And I think he's just making Cindy Watts. He's not portraying her. She's not being portrayed on his channel as a sentimental person in terms of his subs think she's fantastic. But in the broader context, she's actually just building resentment in others and disdain, because it's obvious that she still hasn't moved from her first interview. She hasn't evolved from that. And I think that she's been on this crusade to make her son look like a martyr for 5 years. and it's just she's found a place. They've used people. They've used people, they've used channels, and then discarded channels, just like they did with Miss Mensa. They used her channel for a while, then they discarded her. Then they went to another channel. It was the Kim Kaufman channel. Then they discarded her, or she disappeared, or whatever. And now they've found a home, a nice home, on Dave's channel, because Dave is allowing them to put forward their narrative, and he's siding with their narrative because it benefits him in some way. So you have a codependent relationship between Cindy Watts and Dave, and Ronnie Watts and Dave, because he's basically saying what they want the narrative to be, is that it's Shanann that did this, or that Nicole Kessinger had something to do with it, and not placing any real culpability on their son. And that's what they want. They want their son to look like an innocent, sweet angel, the golden boy that they raised and loved. They want to portray him in that light for the rest of his, for the remainder of his life, because that's how they always viewed him. That's how they raised him, and that's how they always saw him, as the perfect child, as the perfect son. They want to maintain that image of him. And basically speaking, that's exactly the image that they're portraying, that Cindy Watts portrays, that her son was just a wonderful person. And it's these two women, Nicole Kessinger and Shanann, that that led him down, led him up the garden path. And it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Mummy Ramblings brought up the the topic of Chris Watts' sister Jamie, Cindy Watts' daughter, how Jamie has stayed quiet and shielded her children, and she's brought up this idea that Cindy's trying to make out that Jamie's trying to shield her children from the way Shanann talked to her about the ice cream. And Mummy Ramblings says, Mummy Ramblings says to her, no, Jamie's not trying to shield her family from what Shanann said to you about the ice cream, but about what Chris did, his actions, not about ice cream or nuts. And I think that's a very, very good point, because the ice cream incident is really completely, and the chocolate incident is really completely irrelevant. I mean, that's the thing about Cindy, that she makes irrelevant points to try and make a point, to try and justify her son and his golden boy status. And that's all she's interested in. That is all she's interested in. Dave has made, comments about me and the way I look and the way I dress, and saying people shouldn't take me seriously because of that. Well, I actually watched the film Erin Brockovich. She didn't dress conventional for a lawyer, and look at what she was able to accomplish. It's nothing to do with how people are dressed or how people look. It doesn't mean that I don't have a brain and I can't see through what Cindy Watts is doing. I mean, I'm not trying to put myself in the same shoes as the highly renowned Erin Brockovich. Nowhere near as successful as she is, and nowhere near as renowned as she is, and nowhere near as accomplished as she is, and very few people are. But the way I dress has nothing to do with the words that come out of my mouth, and it certainly doesn't affect what's in my head and what's in my brain. Which it was just a very petty comment that he made about me. But that's the thing about Cindy Watts. She makes these really petty references to chocolate and ice cream to try and paint Shanann in a certain light. And yet she never ever references or talks about what her son actually did. She never says anything about those oil tanks. I mean, and that's the real basis of what I'm trying to say here, is that, the points that Cindy brings up to try and paint Shanann in a certain light, in a negative light, they're completely irrelevant. And of course, all of this concho over the interview is going to send traffic to Dave's channel, which is what he wants. So, the mission has been accomplished in one sense. Contro sells. And of course, Chris is a renowned poet now, an amazing writer. She didn't even know it. He was so quiet, he was so perfect, and now he is an absolute renowned writer. And she had to take that little dig at Shanann in the end. Shanann did it according to her. Remember she's talking about Nico, and never having met her grandson, except she has tried to claim, and so has Ronnie, has tried to dispute whether Nico was their grandson. I mean, you have all these little back and forth games being played. I remember I used to write poetry as a teenager, and I remember I was sent a letter once that my poetry had won a prestigious award and was going to be um, put in a book, and that I should come to this function, this event, to receive my prestigious poetry award. Even as a teenager, I remember reading that letter thinking, something's fishy about all this. Well, of course, to go to this event, I'll have to pay at least £100. And the book that my poem was going to be featured in was going to be was going to cover about quarter of a page in a 500-page book that would be right at the back. I apparently won this prestigious award, and I was going to have to pay at least £200 to go to the event to collect the award. Go figure. But apparently Chris is a renowned poet now. Come on, Cindy. It's time for you to accept the truth and be honest. And, Chris is not the amazing poet that you want him to be, and the amazing achiever that you want him to be. He's just Chris. And you need to project onto him for what he did and not unto others, because the ice cream, the nuts, the chocolate, it really is irrelevant in the grand scheme and context of what happened.